Welcome back with the Power Perception Podcast. It is your host, Langi Hola. We have the privilege of being joined by one of the Euless legends, the one and only Eileen Vanisi. Welcome today.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. So, for all of my podcast guests, I usually do a little intro, and then I'll ask probably my favorite question to ask. So, the intro about Eileen is she's probably the best shot put thrower that ever come through Euless Trinity High School. She went to the University of Texas as well. 8-time All-American, if I stand.
Yeah, and 3-time national champion.
3-time national champion.
And I'm in the Hall of Honor.
And that stands for itself. Like there's nothing, I don't know any other poly who's even come close to that, who's gone through the halls of Trinity. With that being said, and being an athlete growing up, I feel like there's always a moment in time where you feel like you got humbled. That kind of put you on, okay, now I got to get my stuff together to get this grind going. So my question is, when's the first time you got playing sports?
I don't know if I've ever really got, to tell you the truth. Because I started in 7th grade. Mm-hmm. And that was just, I don't know, because we had just moved back to Euless and from Arlington. And we got up to Central Junior High, and they were asking about schedules because, by then, junior high is the next level up beyond elementary. And so they asked me, do you want to be in athletics or in PE? And I said, well, what's the difference? They said, well, PE is just, that's like a class. Athletics is a team thing. So I said, well, I'll be in athletics. And that's how my journey began. I got in the district. It was too late for volleyball or basketball. So I ended up running cross country. And then when track season came, the way they do it, that you try out for every event. So, you jumped, you went through, and I just happened to be good at throwing. And that's how it started for me.
Awesome. So it only makes sense that you have never got, right? And so, I'm sitting here thinking, for a lot of people who probably don't really like outside of the community of Texas, no one has ever even like sniffed what like the Polynesian side of girls sports in Euless was. Mm-hmm. And so for you being one of the first, probably the first, Polynesian girl to make it out of Euless, who would you say were people that you looked up to while you're coming up, first getting into athletics?
Well, that's kind of hard because there were nobody else here. Mm-hmm. Being like the first girl in athletics, it was just, there was nobody to really look up to because I didn't see anybody like me. So when you ask that question, it's difficult for me to pinpoint anything other than that I just happen to be good at it. And that was the thing about that, is that I had no idea what a scholarship was. I had no idea about college because we never discussed that. My parents were just working all the time, and I was working as well. And it was just one of those things where the coaches were the ones who told me about college. And they said, you're really good. And, you have an opportunity to go to college on a scholarship. And I was like, well, what is a scholarship? And they were like, well, they pay for everything. And it just went from there. I didn't think about it too much, and I just did what I was doing.
Wow. So you said you didn't really have anyone to look up to. Did you have any like mentors along the way, certain coaches that you probably gravitated towards too?
Yeah. At Trinity, my basketball coach, Sue Cannon, was a big part of my athletic career, and also Coach Tim Ford, who's now the athletic director at Louisville ISD. And he was my throw coach. He's my shot putting discus thrower coach. And he's the one who basically helped me improve my technique and was there for every step of the way since high school, all the way until I graduated. And he was there for every big track meet. He was there for the regionals and the state championships.
So looking back, like going through high school, I feel like in the sport of track, it's like the one sport where dealing with anxiety before you get on and it's time to perform, you're literally like by yourself. And it's usually like a battle between, you and whatever event that you're doing at the time. Maybe go into like the mental mindset that you did to like kind of prepare yourself to get the juices flowing before you would perform.
Well, the thing about it is that when you're the only one, you have to find ways of motivating yourself and keeping yourself calm. And for me, it was just believing in the work that I was doing and all the practices and stuff that we were doing, and really blocking everything out. Because if you ask people about me when I was in high school, everybody would think that I was a mean person because I didn't speak to nobody. I didn't socialize outside of my team or my teammates. And so with that, it's just I was like a loner as well. And so I just kept everything inside. But for some reason I managed to block all the negative stuff out and just move forward.
I find that intriguing because I remember watching an interview with Randy Moss recently. He went on the Get Your Popcorn Ready podcast, and he had said, if there's anything I take away from my career is this, the road to greatness is lonely.
Yes,
and
indeed.
And not many people really understand that until you're in the thick of working hard by yourself. And all your friends you thought you had dwindle because not many people are willing to wake up at 4 or 5 a.m., stay on the schedule, do on the things that no one's really willing to do. And the funny thing is, everyone knows what they're supposed to do to be great, but how come no one ever does it? And then it never really made sense to me. And then he went on his like long spiel about, his journey about everything. And so, I'm sitting here thinking about it and I'm just like, man, it doesn't matter who's great. The journey is always like one that's like similar.
Yes, that's correct.
And so, we talked about before, how, your sports, mentality kind of helped you with what you're going through, right now in life. And so maybe you can just give us a little insight of, how sports has helped you, past your career.
Well, the thing about, when I was in high school is that, track, you have a bunch of teammates.
Mm-hmm.
But after the district championships, I'm the only one left. There's nobody to go into regionals and there's nobody going to state. All 3 years of high school, I was the only girl that went to state, and it was one boy, and it was a different guy every year. And so what I ended up learning was that, now I had to practice by myself. It was just me and the coach. There was nobody else, no other teammates there to motivate you or help you along or even have, just to have fun at practice. There was nobody there. And that happened to me in college as well. I was the only shot putter going to the national championship. There was nobody else. So I had to learn to do things on my own, push myself, motivate myself, especially like in the weight room, had to run by myself, do all the drills by myself. There was nobody there. So now that I'm in the position of I am with my health issues, it's almost like the same thing. It's just like competition for me. It's block everything else out, focus on what I need to focus on, and just try to be positive and stay strong. And every day I wake up is a blessing to wake up. And every day that I don't have a heart issue or a kidney issue is a good day for me.
Well, I think I speak for everyone, especially from our hometown, where we're thankful you're still here with us. So I had a recent conversation with, well, it wasn't even a conversation. It was my father-in-law. When he had contracted COVID, he went through something really similar. So he served in the military in the earlier part of his life, and he always says, like, I always like grab back from all those experiences, and it's really molded him and how he is today. So he got COVID, and he got it bad. So he had gotten to the point where he had pneumonia. He was in the doctors, and I think he was in the ICU at one point, and he was telling us, they were like this close to putting me on a ventilator, and I was like, I've heard once you get to that point, you're pretty much close to losing your life. And then he said mentally he had to go to a dark place he hasn't gone to for a very long time since he was in the military. And then he said all the pain and all the aches and all the stuff that I was feeling, it was just like me in my head telling my body, this is what's going to happen come hell or high water, pretty much. And so our whole entire our household at the time was getting hit by COVID, but not to the extent that he was. And so we were all like, checking in with him and seeing what was going on. And he kept telling us, oh yeah, I'm fine, I'm okay, like, you guys don't worry about me. So he comes back home finally after he's beaten this thing. And my mother-in-law was just saying, it's like, so, how did you feel while you were in the hospital? And then he said, there was one day where I thought I was going to go. But the only thing that like kept me fighting was like, I have a family I need to take care of, and, all the stuff that's like pretty much his why. And then she was like, you were lying to me this whole time? You kept saying you're okay and this and that. And he's like, I'm not going to bring any stress. I knew I could handle the situation. And so I think that's something the average person doesn't really understand, the mental part of everything. And it's usually probably the most important part once you get to the highest level. That's probably what separates everybody. So maybe we can kind of shift lanes. Let's go back to, your upbringing and how that may have prepared you or pushed you to being the successful athlete that you were.
Well, I was born in the Bay Area in San Mateo, and we lived there till about 6 years old. And then after my grandfather passed, on my dad's side, we moved to Independence, Missouri, all places. And we were there for about 4 years. And during that time, my parents' relationship had ended, and they ended up getting divorced. And so my mother, being a single parent of two of us, because I have another sister, she decided to move us to Texas. So we came to Texas. That's how we ended up here. And then as time went on here, we lost my grandmother, who passed away when I was right before sixth grade. And then we had moved away to Arlington for a year and came back. But when we came back, my mother was now a single mother of four. And she got to, not a really good place in that she was struggling to provide for us. And so she asked me, because I had looked a lot older at the time and a lot taller. I was about age 11, if I could help her. And I never hesitated or disagreed. I said, okay, whatever I need to do. So we got my birth certificate. We changed the date, photocopied it, and I went and got a job. And then my first job was airport security at JFW Airport at age 11. And, during that time, and it's like, I think that's where it all started for me, was that now being 11, but I had to pretend to be 18. And, when you're 11-year-olds, you socialize with people a lot older than you. You learn a lot of things that most 11-year-olds shouldn't even know. And you learn to have relationships with people in terms of like work relationships and friendships, and try to learn to live in a different world than where you currently come from. So you have to leave all the childhood behind, and now you have to somewhat pretend to be an adult. And so I ended up working and going to school at the same time, all the way until grade 12, before I graduated high school. And I worked every year, every summer. I even worked during athletics. Like I would have a basketball game on Friday. I went to work on Saturday. And I worked the weekends when I was in high school, Saturday and Sunday, for lunch money for me and my sister. And I think that's where I learned to keep everything inside and and constantly just motivate myself, in the terms of just working hard. That's all I ever knew was work. I knew nothing else. So it kind of that carried over to the athletic part. It was just it was something for me to do, and it just turned out that I was good at it. And so I just went with it. The coaches, they whatever they told me to do, I did. Whether it's run, jump, throw, do whatever it took to be good in that particular sport is what I did. And it was hard because there was nobody else. We didn't, like nowadays, my sister has kids, and when my nieces were in high school and played on volleyball teams, we all went to the games. We all went, supported them. Well, when I was coming up, there wasn't that. My parents never came to a game. My mom showed up for senior night and I think one track meet. But I went to state every year. And guess what you learn is that, you don't have that support like other people have. So you just tend to just focus on what you're doing at the time. For me, it was just the athletic part. It was just go throw, and don't worry about nothing else.
Man, I feel like, man, that's like a bomb to me, man. Like the stuff that you said, because coming from like my parents, and
Yeah.
they're very supportive and this and that, and so like seeing how there's no excuse for anyone not to be successful at what they do, and that's my biggest takeaway from that. I remember listening. So I listen to all types of sports podcasts, and I was listening to one where Kevin Garnett was talking about his upbringing, right? And so at the age of, I want to say it was either 13, 14, he had to move from down south up to Chicago, just him and his sister at the time. And his mom was telling him, it's like, now whatever you have to do to make ends meet, you're the man of the house now. So he had to grow up at a really young age, and he said, no, I was working, I was playing on a club basketball team. We had practices 5 to 6 times a week. Right after practice, I was to my job, and then back in the morning, school, getting my sister ready, and we were out the door. And so that was my schedule. And then by the time he was 19, 17, yeah, it was like 17, 18, for him to get drafted. He didn't even think he could get drafted. Isaiah Thomas had caught word of him. There's this great young high school basketball player in Chicago playing right now. He gets into the gym with Michael Jordan. He holds his own against a lot of NBA pro guys, and everything else is history. But he said the number one thing that he credited that helped him be ready for the NBA was I was an adult before it was time.
Yeah.
And so I think oftentimes, parents think, we can only give our kid this much or that much. And in reality, it's like, if the situation calls for it, you'll do whatever it takes to make ends meet, I guess.
Correct.
And so just listening to your story, how has that changed your perception on what athletes should be doing to prepare, I guess?
I think, back then there was really nothing, we really didn't have anything to look forward to, because we didn't see anybody like us doing anything other than working and helping out at home. And for me, the difference between then and now and the athletes that I see now is that I just be honest, but these kids are weak mentally and physically, to the point where, a lot of them feel entitled to stuff. And it's like, but you haven't done any work to be entitled.
Mm-hmm.
And when I don't like excuses either when they say, well, I can't do this or it's just too much going on. And I'm like, you have yet to experience what too much is going on. You know, you live at home. Your parents provide everything for you. How is it hard to motivate yourself to go do something better? You know, the thing I see about kids these days, and they don't put the work in. And if you see the percentage of athletes who actually come out, especially here in Euless, it's a very small percentage. There's only a few that come out, and the reason being is because those few figured a way to do the extra stuff that you need to do in order to be better and to move forward. Even academically, we have a problem with that. We have so much talent in our community, but because, you know, they don't have the grades or they don't think about the grades, they don't get to go anywhere. And then we have a situation where unless you're going to go to a D1 school, you're basically a failure. And I've seen that with a lot of kids, especially the football players. But I'm like, but have you really looked at what happens when you go to junior college? How many professional athletes come out of JUCO into the D1 system and then get drafted and play professionally? It's just another avenue, another journey to get to where you need to get to ultimately. And the problem in our community is that we look down on that. You know, it's like, oh, he's just going to little school. She's just going to little school. But a free education, there's something that's a lot bigger than a little school. And I think that's the problem we have in our community, that we have that mindset. We don't have the mindset of, you know, like the parents who are at every game, pushing their kids every day, waking them up, paying for club, paying for trainers, paying for gym memberships. We don't have that mentality. And the kids these days don't think about that you can find a way to succeed if you go look for it. You know, because you can't wait for it. No one's going to come give you money, give you a brand new car, a house, or a career. You have to go make that career. And I think that's the problem we have today. And the stuff that I see that, because like I said, I have nieces and nephews, talented kids, but they don't have that mentality because they don't really have to work for anything because everything is given to them. And that's the problem we have in our community today.
Right. So I remember when my little brother, so my little brother's playing at Utah State right now. Mm-hmm. And I remember, so when I was in high school, I did everything the wrong way. And so when I saw the tendencies that he was starting to fall under, I was like, okay, I'm going to deter this path and make sure get you on the straight and narrow. I don't know if I've shared this experience on the pod, but there was one time where my mom was asking me to take him to a camp that we had in Taylorsville at the time. I knew the coaches, good friends of mine, and I knew he was going to get a wake-up call coming to this camp. And my mom was always complaining about, you're always late to all your meetings and football practice and this and that. It's like, you think you're so much better than everyone else. It's like, just because you're bigger and this and that. It's like, and so she kept complaining to me, and I was like, okay, I know a few guys running a camp right now. I think I can get them in. So we pull up to this place. I was like yelling at him. I was like, hey, this camp starts at like whatever time it was. And we showed up like 45 minutes after it had already started. So he comes in and I tell him, it's like, go get warmed up. Everyone's already running through drills and whatnot. By the time he's done warming up, which was like lackadaisical and how he did it, they started doing one-on-ones. And there's another D1 kid already there. And so one of the guys in my youth was there, and he had lined up my little brother with him. He's like, you two are the only one the same size, so I'll let you guys go one-on-ones. So everyone else was doing one-on-ones on one side, and then me and my little brother was on D-line, and then the kid who was up D1 was a D lineman playing O-line, so he doesn't really even know how to play the position. First rep goes through, and My little brother was like, he was just trying to like act all cool and whatnot. He gets pancaked, and it's the first time in his life he had ever been pancaked. So his face down in the grass, and he had like these turf marks across his face. And I can tell like his face was starting to get red. He had gotten embarrassed. And it was the first time it had ever happened to him his whole entire life. And he was just like, and I can just tell like he was like pissed, holding back his tears. He's like, and he's yelling at the coach, "Hey, run that back, run them back." And then next time it was like a stalemate. You couldn't really tell who won, who lost. And then the next time the coach was like, "Okay, last rep." And then he loses the last rep. And then after that rep, he walks off the field. And then my youth leader at the time, Stu, is his name. He was just like, "Hey, man, is he good?" I was like, "Nah, this is exactly what he needed." So we're sitting in my dad's truck. My mom was in the driver's seat, and he's sitting in the back, and he's just crying. My mom's like, "What happened?" It's like, "Oh, he lost." And like I said, and I whispered, like, "Oh yeah." And then my mom was like trying to hide her smile because she knew this is what he needed. So I'm looking over him and say, "Hey, you good?" And then he looks up at me after he was crying and wiped his tears. He's like, "That shit will never happen again. I promise you, it will never happen again." And so the next day, that was like I want to say that was a Tuesday or Wednesday. So they were leaving so this was in the summer. They leave to scout camp the next day. Get ready to leave for work, and it's like 5 a.m. I'm leaving the house, and we live on this big hill at the time. And I see him at the bottom of the hill, shirt fully soaked at 5 a.m. So he's been out there for at least an hour. And then they go to camp, and then I hear from my dad. He's like, "Oh, he got up every day during camp and worked out 4 a.m. before everyone else. Then whenever the other kids who played football, he'd work out with them again." And then my mom always makes fun of him now. She's like, "Why can't you just do it when I tell you the first time? Why does someone have to beat you so bad?" And he's just like, "Because," he's like, "nothing feels worse than losing." And so that's always been like his motivating factor. So that's kind of like my mentorship relationship with my brother. Do you feel like you have like a kid that, that you have been in contact with, that you've coached or whatnot, that, he understands what it is to getting to that point, he or she?
Well, during the summer, one of my nieces reached out. She's a senior at Bell, and she's a shot put and discus thrower. And she had called me up, and I don't really do too much anymore because of my health issues. So she asked me if I could help her because she wanted to go to, she wants to go to college. And so I said, "Okay, no problem, but you're gonna, this is not gonna be easy, and don't waste my time because I'm not gonna get up every day, even when I don't feel good, to come out here. If you're gonna come out here and not do the things necessary for you to do." So we did this twice a week, and each time we were outside, she got better and better and better, and even her attitude changed. It was like it was more serious. It was more focused on what I tell her to do. I even told her that she needed to go work out in the weight room. I said, "You have access to the Bell weight room. You just need to go in there. And the one thing you need not to worry about is what other people are doing." Because that's the hardest thing, is when you go into some place and everybody's looking at you like, "What you doing in here?" And you have to forget about those people. You have to block that out and understand that you're there to do work. You're not there to socialize with people. It's like when you go to the gym and people have their shirts off and their tank tops on. You're like, "Okay, but I thought we were here to work out, not here to show your swag and floss your muscles and stuff, And unfortunately, school started and we weren't able to continue. And so, but she calls me now and then and talks to me about stuff. And so I just tell her, "Look, you just got to keep working at it. Don't lose focus. If this is what you really want to do, is to get out and go to school, then you need to focus on that. Focus on your grades and your practices and your technique when it comes to the throwing. And if you do those two things, you'll be fine. Because I told her, even if you get an offer to go to a Division II college, doesn't matter. It's a school. It's an opportunity to go somewhere, learn from other people, and you don't know what it's going to lead to. And so she's been doing really well now. And I just look forward to the spring when when track comes back. And then I'll be able to go to the track meets and see her and see how she's doing. Because I also help Coach Mia Langi with the discus throwers at Trinity every year. I go out there twice a week too and help them with all the kids with their technique and stuff. And we've been lucky that the last couple of years, we've had one person go to the regional track meet. We're just working on getting somebody over that hump to get to the state championships.
So this is just like my question out of curiosity. What would you say was more fulfilling in terms of, what you've been able to do? Like, was it more fulfilling for you to, when you're competing and winning at the level that you were personally, or like, would you say it's more fulfilling like when you see someone that you coached or helped out get to that point?
I think it's more fulfilling when you help other people succeed,
Mm-hmm.
because that just helps the community along.
Mm-hmm.
Whenever somebody ever asks me to help out with something, I don't hesitate and I don't say no unless there's a problem that I can't do it. But I feel that that's your way of giving back, is that I will go help them at track during the spring. I'll help anybody who needs any type of conditioning training or anything like that wants to do it. I feel that's something we're supposed to do, because I wasn't lucky to have that. And my whole thing is that I like to see these kids get out, explore the world, go out and see what it's really like. I've been fortunate that because of my track career that I've been around the world. I've been to different countries. I've been in, U.S. national teams. And it's a whole experience. It's a whole different vibe because, it's beyond Euless. The world is bigger than Euless. And that's what some of these kids don't realize, is that there's a whole big world out there. And you're never going to see it if you don't try to step out of your comfort zone. And that's why I don't hesitate helping people out. I want to see them succeed. It's just like the school records I have at Trinity have been there since 80, 88, 89, and no one has come close to breaking it. But I want to come help somebody break it, because that's what it's supposed to be. Records are made to be broken. And you want to see the next generation be better and better than what it was the way you left it.
That's awesome to hear. I feel like, especially within the Polynesian community, when we have someone succeed and who's great, I feel like our accessibility to those type of people is very uncommon, because in other communities, other ethnic groups, when people reach that certain height, those people, per se, become untouchable in a sense.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, interviews with like my brother-in-law and all these other guys, he was like saying, whenever I was a D tackle at the University of Utah, like Haloti was reaching out to me in off seasons, like, "Hey, bro, you want to work out?" And he was winning Super Bowls and all pros in the NFL. And Shone Bo'uha was doing the same thing. And every player that I have talked to, or someone that I brought up, they said the same exact thing. He's like, yeah, so especially within our community, it always makes me really proud to know, like, we take care of our own.
Of course.
Yeah. And so, thinking about that, who would you say was, it doesn't even have to be Polynesian in a sense, but when you went to University of Texas, I imagine the culture shock compared to living to Euless. Who would you say was the person that kind of, helped bring you under their wing, or was like a vet to you as the new rookie coming in?
Well, when we go to orientation, they assign us a big sister. And my big sister happened to be Carlet Guidry, who's like a 23-time national champion.
Oh, wow.
Plus, 10 plus All-American and national champion and all that. And she happened to be in the Olympics in 92. She was my big sister. And so you get to see firsthand what it's like to be at that level. And so, that thing about being at Texas, that you're exposed to that because there are a bunch of Olympians that are training at Texas. So you get to see what it takes. And if you look at these people and how much work they put in, you understand why they're so good. Because they come out there and they're so focused, laser focused on running all the running they have to do, whatever drills they have to do, block starts and all that. And you see that you're a part of that. And so because of that, it helps to motivate you like, well, I want to be just as good too. And so for me in that culture, that's what it was. It was that I got to meet girls from different countries, girls from different backgrounds, even from different, especially from the East Coast. And the one thing you find is that, you build those relationships with people because you all have the same common goal, is to be successful. And being at Texas, that was the thing. Because when I got there, they had just won indoor and outdoor national championships. So you come to a team full of champions, and it's like, well, now it's time to put the work in. And fortunately for me, I won my first national championship as a freshman.
Wow.
And that changed everything because it's like now you're the number one in the country. Everybody's coming for you. And so you got to hold your own. You got to make sure that you're still there every year. And being around a team environment like that where success was the norm, and we don't, the thing about that is that, they don't take that for granted, and they don't like mediocrity. If you can't come to perform, then you don't need to be on this team. That was just the mentality.
I imagine the caliber of athletes that you're constantly in contact with. Would you say there was ever a time where maybe on a U.S. team or like the '96 Olympic trials that you participated in, that you had like been starstruck by some of the athletes that you saw? Like any names, any experiences in particular?
At the trials in '96, out on the warm-up field, I was with Jackie Joyner-Kersee and her husband. And, it's a difference when people know who you are. Mm-hmm. They're like, hey, Eileen, I hope, I hope you do well today. And I said, well, thank you, because she was still competing during that time. And then, I've been around like Michael Johnson.
Wow.
Gail Devers.
That's crazy.
So I was on some of those national teams with some of these people. I was in Sweden in '95 when Michael Johnson broke the 400-meter world record. I happened to be at that track meet. So I've been around a lot of people and seen a lot of success. And like I said, the one thing that's common between all of them is that they just work hard. And they have a certain swag about them. Because I think in order to be that good, you have to be a little bit cocky. You have to, and it's not necessarily one of those things where it's a bad thing. It's knowing that you're confident in what you're doing and that you come to compete every time you come.
Well, it's funny whenever you were talking about like confidence, right? My favorite story about confidence is probably everyone knows who Ray Lewis, the linebacker, mm-hmm. is, and Deion Sanders at the time is working for NFL Network. In the playoffs at the time, they're getting ready to play the divisional round against Tom Brady and the Patriots. Primetime hits him up and is like, hey, we want to do an interview with you before the game this week. And Ray Lewis is like, I can't talk this week, but I'll talk to you next week. And then Prime's like, you playing that boy in Boston, there might not be a next week. And then he's like, Prime, I'll talk to you next week. They go on. That was the year they went on to win the last Super Bowl before he retired. And so I'm sitting there and I'm just like, man. And, the background I come up from, I always feel like as Polynesians, sometimes we're humble to a fault, right? And so the manner of being braggadocious or this and that was never something that our culture was ever centered around. But I think when you get to a point where you work that hard it breeds that type of confidence. And only people who have put in that amount of work actually realize what that confidence feels like. Maybe go into, maybe that how that helped you working that hard built your confidence.
Well, the thing was that, being the number one shot putter at Texas and being in the, top 5 in the country every year, you do have a certain swag about that. I remember in '94, I was going through an undefeated season, and everywhere I went, indoor, outdoors, breaking records. And we get to the '94 national championships in Boise, Idaho, and there's this young lady who throws for UCLA, very good. And the talk was, hey, she's coming to beat you. And I was just like, well, I'm not here to lose. So, and that was my thing. It was that I didn't have to talk it. I let my actions speak louder than words because I'm not one of those people that talk. But it was just that feeling that I've done all this work not to come here and lose. And regardless of what anybody was saying on the outside, when you're that confident in the work that you've done, it doesn't deter you from what your ultimate goal is, which is to win. And for me, there was no such thing as losing that year. I went undefeated the whole year and won 2 national championships. And that's the thing about when you say, the confidence that you have, it's an unspoken confidence, because you have those that are, they're brash, they're loud, but they still manage to back it up. And then you got those who are the quiet ones that you never know what's going to happen.
Silent killers.
Right. And I'm one of those people. I just go in, and my performance speaks for itself.
Wow. I'm just like in amazement, like, because anytime I hear about like any little success from any community that has to be dealing with Polynesians, that makes me proud, But, someone who's reached the type of success that you have, that just like, blows my mind, because if the successes that you were reaching today or back then were going on today, like, I think how much attention that would garner around the community.
I'd be on that new, all that new sponsorship stuff that all these college athletes will be doing,
So, with that being said, I think there's also one question that I really wanted to ask you. Being that you were such a successful athlete, I always talk with my wife, and I told her, my mindset changed when my daughter was born, in terms of how I saw girls' sports. Mm-hmm. Very close-minded about the whole entire thing. And then as I held my daughter in my arms and seeing her was born, everything instantly changed. I ended up started watching WNBA games, all this other stuff. Yeah. And it wasn't because I was looking out for my daughter. It was just my eyes were now open. Mm-hmm. And so I think oftentimes whenever we look at women's sports, there's always a connotation that a lot of the girls who are great women athletes are like, oh, but some girls don't want to do that. It's like, oh, I'm going to look manly if I start lifting, or do this and do that. What would you say to those type of comments or that type of thinking?
Well, I personally went through a lot of that in comparisons that, even in the Tom community, my mom used to say, she's strong like a man. And I'm like, really? Mm-hmm. I mean, do you have to say that, But that's just the mentality of people around you. The way I looked at it, it was like, I didn't really care about what other people were doing, because the thing that happened to me in high school and in college is that I was known as the one. I was known as the strongest and the successful one. And I'll give you a story, at Texas. I was very good in the weight room. And one time, one of the starting linebackers decided to work out with me in my squat workout. And he couldn't even get through my warm-up. And my warm-up was 450 plus.
Wow.
Right, for sets of 8. And he dropped the bar, and everybody was cracking up on him. And he was like, why do you keep messing with that girl? you know how strong she is. She outlifts all of us over here. And it got to the point that when I was at Texas, I couldn't work out in the weight room when football was in there because some of the guys felt intimidated by what I was doing in there. Like when I first started out, I'd go into the weight room. I'd be on one side of the weight room and everybody else is on the other side. And as I rotate around, they rotate around too, to the point where I was told that the head coach had told him she does not need to be in here when we're in here. And so I never worked out again in the weight room with football in there. And that's because I got to a point where I'll even give you some numbers. I benched over 400 and squat over 600 at one point.
That's amazing.
And so, you know, dealing with like the masculinity thing and the being the big, strong one, I've dealt with that my whole life. It's always been there. But the one thing I do is when I let them understand that I'm not here to embarrass you. I'm not here to show off. That's never been me. I just come and do the work. And if it happens that I'm at the same level as you, then I'm sorry. Because my strength coach was a well-renowned PhD, and he was like the Bulgarian national weightlifting coach. But he was also a very good soccer player when he was younger, back in the 50s and 60s. His name was Angel Spazov. And he told me, you know what? You can walk into any weight room in the country and outlift 90% of those boys in there. And, you know, for me, I was like, okay, you know, but I didn't let that affect the way that I continued to work. I mean, I understood that was my natural gift and my abilities, but at the same time, I knew that was part of my success in my event, was to be that strong, to lift that strong. And so when it comes to, you know, the way women were portrayed as athletes, because the one thing that we learned when I went to Texas is that a lot of the administrative staff there were part of the Title IX movement. They're the ones who helped get us those scholarships, helped get us the NCAA recognition to allow us to come in and have equal opportunity as the boys. And the one thing we learned from them was like, it wasn't an easy road. We had to fight for you guys to get this opportunity. So that's why when we get to that certain level of success, it's important that we focus some of that back on to your community. I love seeing the girls play because, you know, and I love seeing the way parents are now is that, like you said, your eyes were wide open. Mm-hmm. It's because now these girls have an opportunity that they didn't have before, that they could go be successful in college, get an academic or an athletic scholarship, play professionally, because that wasn't a thing back in the 90s. Mm-hmm. If you wanted to play professional basketball, you had to go overseas.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until the 96 games that the WNBA, the ABA were formed that people got to actually see that there was a place for the girls and that they could draw fans to them. They could sell tickets. They could sell merch, you know. And even today, you see how popular the women's soccer team is. You know, you see that in the volleyball teams and stuff. It's one of those things that shows that that we have changed our mentality towards women in sports. And because now more fathers like yourself are having girls, mm-hmm. you know, you're excited about those opportunities for them because they didn't have it before. And I think that's, you know, the one thing that the focus that has changed over the years is that, you know, there's other things beyond being in high school for girls now.
What's crazy is there's always so much pushback in terms of, well, no one really wants to watch this sport and this and that. It was funny. I was reading one of the stats that came out by ESPN, and they were saying for the WNBA team that had recently won the last WNBA championship, they sold out every single one of their playoff games. And so just take that into consideration. Like, so it's not actually, you know, the product that's the problem. It's the mentality.
Yeah, it is.
And so it's just been taking a long time for the mentality to catch up to what the product actually already is. there's a testament to what their product actually is, because if you see the biggest ambassadors for WNBA basketball is who? The best NBA basketball players in the world. And at every single one of the playoff games, especially when it gets into the later rounds, when the games start getting better, you always see LeBron, Chris Paul, Devin Booker, all of these guys gravitate towards the game. And so I remember there's this story of Diana Taurasi whenever she was in Phoenix at the time. They used to share the same practice gym as the Phoenix Suns. So at the time they had Steve Nash. They had like two other guys who were really good shooters on their team. 50, 40, 90 guys, right? And so Diana Taurasi had just finished her workout, and the boys, it was their turn to come on and use the court. And then Diana calls out Steve Nash and the other two, and it's like, hey, it's like, we're doing a shooting workout. You guys want to join in? And then Steve just has a smirk on his face because he knows exactly what she's doing. And for those of you who don't know Diana, she carries the same type of mentality as Kobe, looking for every opportunity to compete, and like takes all the slights and uses it in her game. So they go through the workout, and she lets the boys go first. And so Steve Nash and them go through, and I think they hit like 60, 70, 80, 93s out of 100. And she straight looks at them before she starts, and she's like, yeah, y'all lost. Went through and hit every single one and didn't miss. And so that just speaks to they have the skill, right? Yeah. And so that's something I'm happy that you were able to just, expound upon. But before we finish, I'll just, go through a bunch of our last like just short, quick questions, and then we'll go ahead and get out of here. If you were to able to describe Valerie Adams in 3 words, what would it be?
Gifted, great work ethic, and humble.
Dope. Next question would be, if you had a Mount Rushmore of Texas track athletes, who would be on that Mount Rushmore?
Ooh, that's a hard one because there's so many. And you can see that with all the Olympians that we've had in Texas. Because we've had some Jamaican Olympians, and we have had some U.S. Olympians like Sonia Richards, Juliet Cuthbert, Carlet Gidry. So it's hard to pick.
Maybe go from your generation then, just from while you were there.
Well, my generation, like I said, it was Carlet. Juliet Cuthbert was on the Jamaican national team. She had graduated already, but she trained there. Another teammate, because Carlet was my teammate, and Sandy Richards was my teammate. She was another Jamaican quarter miler. So they were like the most successful ones on the team because they had already experienced international competition and had done well. So as far as Mount Rushmore, those are a few of the people because I knew them personally and I watched how hard they worked every day.
And then my last thing would be, if you could say anything to, kids of Euless, like what would be your one takeaway from your whole entire career?
The one thing I want to say is that you can't achieve anything without hard work. And your work ethic defines what kind of athlete, even what kind of person you become. And because I don't feel that sometimes they work as hard anymore. And I feel that if you want to be successful in anything you do, especially even in athletics and stuff, is that you need to stay focused on the grind because nothing is given to you. You have to earn every little bit of what you get. And you can see that by the success of people who have worked hard and diligently every day and have done the extra work. Because I think that sometimes because they have some sort of success, a small success. They forget what it takes to maintain that success. And in order to maintain that, you have to continuously work. And that's the one thing I would say to these kids these days is that you have to do the extra. You have to do the grind. You have to grind each and every day and focus on those things that's necessary for you to be better.
All right, man. Words of gold right there. So, Eileen, thank you for
Thank
your
you.
time. Thank you for coming out with me today. I learned so much about you. Yeah, just thank you. And that is the Power of Perception podcast with Eileen Vanisi. Oh,
Was that okay?
oh man, that was amazing. Yeah.